What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be taking a look at an interesting deck that I kind of thought was one thing, and then the more I looked into it, it was something completely different. So today we're going to be taking a look at what the list was called Jund Midrange, but I'm going to call it Jund Atraxa for the Pioneer format. And of course, before we get too deep into it, I would just like to say if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so and hitting the notification bell so you know when videos like this and others get posted. And in the links, I have a few links in the description. One goes to the deck list that you can see on MTG Goldfish. Go ahead and follow that link if you want to check out the deck. And of course, to my Twitch and my uh, Discord server as well. Go ahead and follow me over on Twitch and follow the link to the Discord server as well, and feel free to join. So, Jund Atraxa is centered around this card, Atraxa Grand Unifier, which is not a Jund card at all. It doesn't have any red in it. How can it be Jund? Well, it Junds in the fact that it kills your opponent over the course of a few turns, and that's about it. So, Atraxa Grand Unifier is a 7 mana 7/7 with Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink. When Atraxa Grand Unifier enters the battlefield, you reveal the top 10 cards of your library, and for each card type, you may put a card of that type from among the revealed cards in your hand, and you put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Which, of course, for those that are not aware of like what those card types are, is artifact, battle, creature, enchantment, instant, land, planeswalker, and sorcery are card types. Of course, there's tribal as well, but tribal doesn't exist in the Pioneer format and will probably never exist in the Pioneer format. So you're never, and there's not enough card types where you can ever draw 10 cards with Atraxa, but it does end up drawing enough cards. So obviously, this deck is unable to cast. It is literally playing like Jund colors. It has one mana confluence, so like even then, like it really, it really can't without the help of like the World Tree, which lets your lands all tap for a mana of any color if you control 6 or more lands. With the last bottom ability not being very relevant. I mean, it literally is like in the worst case scenario, like you can cast your Atraxa Grand Unifier if you have the World Tree in play, and that is the only way that you can do that. So of course, how are we getting this Atraxa into play? Of course, with the card Transmogrify. Not going for something like a creativity, Indomitable Creativity, which we've seen from some of the decks in Pioneer. For one, you don't need to do it for a multiple amount because you are not playing, Atraxa in multiples is not very good. Like, at least them entering the battlefield at the same time. So, like, Transmogrify is just good enough on its own to do it. So that's all we need is this card. A little bit easier on the mana base as well, not requiring triple red, only requiring a single red and 3 of any other color. So obviously we need to exile a creature, and we'll if we exile one of our own, we're going to be able to flip it to Atraxa. So how the heck are we doing this? One of the ways is through a card called Iska's Chariot. And as you'll notice with some of these cards, they do have like an added benefit, to playing them on top of just being able to create transmogrify targets to turn them into Atraxas. So Iska's Chariot, we've seen this since Kaldheim, been a very powerful card. When it enters play, it creates two cats, two cats, and of course, whenever a chariot attacks, you copy a token, or you make a copy of a target token that you control with Crew 4. So, on obviously making a cat, and then just getting to transmogrify it right away, turn into an Atraxa, pretty good. The Atraxa can still obviously crew the Iska's Chariot to be able to attack, make more cats, so on. But, this card is just powerful on its own, just getting to tap to like both your cats, attack with the chariot, make a copy of a cat, and kind of get to do that every turn. And of course, make copies of like the other tokens that this deck will generate, as we will see as we kind of go through the list. Chariot's just a very powerful card on its own. Obviously, creating multiple tokens is also good because your opponent needs multiple removal spells to be able to answer it. And of course, if we ever just get 4 power into play, which will also mean that we could probably generate another target for Transmogrify, but like the chariot itself could end up being transmogrified into an Atraxa. So just something to note. There's this one careful cultivation, which I believe is just really used for the channel ability, where you can pay to discard it and you make a 1/1 green human monk that taps to add a green. So like in this way, like it ramps you, and it also sets up like a turn 3 Transmogrify into Atraxa, which is super difficult to deal with. Obviously, I don't have to tell you how hard that is, or like if you're on the play against like literally any other deck and you just put an Atraxa into play, and your opponent, like unless they're mono green and they have multiple like Cavaliers and things like that already in play, Atraxa is just going to absolutely ruin them and make it very hard for them to race. So this probably being one of your best ones, but it is a one of. The next one, Courier's Briefcase, is another card that we had seen in like the 5-color like mid-range deck, which kind of like ties the room together. It makes a 1/1 when it enters the battlefield, uh, and then you can sacrifice to add a mana of any color. Also, kind of another way that you could cast these Atraxas if that actually comes up. And for one of each color, you can tap, sacrifice a Briefcase to draw 3 cards, which is a way that you can kind of refuel to maybe find like one of your other token producers, find a Transmogrify. If you even if you like you have enough lands in play, I mean, if you able to make one of every color, you can reasonably cast like an Atraxa later in the game as well if you end up drawing it off the Courier's Briefcase. Next one is a new card. Oh, not really like new, but from the same set as Atraxa in Mirix. Mirix adds a colorless mana to your mana pool, but it'll add a mana of any color if it enters the battlefield this turn. But probably the most important bit on it is that you can pay 3 and tap it to create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might with Toxic 1, and the creature can't block. You can do this on like your opponent's end step, kind of dodge sorcery speed or removal that way, or if you kind of like flood the board with a bunch of tokens and your opponent wraths, you're able to Mirix to make a 1/1 and of course Transmogrify, put the Atraxa into play, so on, and kind of get the engine going as well. And just from a repeatable source of getting to do it is kind of nice as well. Fable, probably the most famous one, recently banned in Standard, still a very good card. Obviously getting to make a 2/2, and eventually flipping over into Reflections, which you can use to like Transmogrify and get an Atraxa, almost like that's the whole point of the deck. Also just like the 2/2, just the Goblin Shaman getting to attack, and like making chariots attack and getting to copy like these Goblin Shamans are arguably better 2/2s to copy, especially if you can keep the cats around and stuff. Create more treasure tokens, eventually be able to like hard cast cards like Atraxa, or just get to play multiples of some of your other powerful cards that you have access to in the deck. And if you will slide over, please. Alright, Moto does not like me today for some reason. So those are really our token producers. Ren and Realmbreaker, I guess, can kind of get a honorable mention because the +1 does turn one of your lands into a 3/3 elemental. Vigilance, Hexproof, and Haste until your next turn is still a land. So Transmogrify can target it and flip into, again, Atraxa, do all the things that we've been talking about. Also, giving your lands the ability to tap for a mana of any color is also another way that like Atraxa can, be hard cast if it ever comes to that point. Uh, on top of all that, you have to mill 3 cards, and you may put a permanent card from among the mill cards in your hand. It's kind of a way that you can hit your land drops. Of course, hitting all of these 14 cards that will produce tokens. Not really getting to do much with like the Transmogrify. If you do hit an Atraxa, you can put it into your hand. That said, of course it moved, you have a card like Volcanic Spite, which can do double duty in it gets to hit a target creature, planeswalker, or battle, and then you can put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library, and if you draw a card. So this is a way that you can get Atraxas back into your deck so you can Transmogrify for them later. Also going to deal 3 damage to a creature, planeswalker, makes it a little bit flexible. You're not playing any battles in this deck. You probably could get away with playing battles in it. And somewhere, there's like the invasion that like makes a treasure token. You can discard a card or draw a card. That might actually be the worst to play in this deck. And it's also like a card that you can draw off of your Atraxas. So just overall, just kind of like a neat card. You have this like Tear Asunder in here, where you can get rid of an annoying artifact or enchantment and then like kick it pretty reasonably, and the color restriction isn't too high, where you can just get rid of a non-land permanent altogether. Riveteer's Charm, which I actually saw the other day in the modern deck, getting to do essentially the same thing. Obviously, not getting rid of like Furies or like Murktides from the other side, but getting rid of like opposing Atraxas and things of that nature. Also, getting to hit some of like the big reach creatures from the mono green Devotion deck and so on. Uh, Giving you some draw power, giving you the ability to just play like get a chance to look at 3 more cards and hopefully finding, you know, Transmogrify, any of your other like key cards to set those up. And of course, getting rid of player's graveyard as well can be an added benefit, as well as like Greasefang. Well, I think it may be on the down tick. You really don't hear a lot about it, but still just kind of like a tool to have against them. You have this Go for the Throat just kind of hanging around. Destroying target artifact creature conveniently hits this Atraxa, from like your opponents and stuff. Plus, like there's a lot more creatures that you want to kill that are, in like the Rakdos colors and things like that, more so than, artifacts and things like that. So there is that. And of course, Moto, again, not wanting to cooperate with me because for some reason it just does not like me today. Finally, you have these fatal pushes, 4 of them in your deck. Just uh, helps you survive into the late game, into the mid to late game where like you're able to like play these Atraxas. Fatal pushes do have the added benefit of just, being cheap removal, and like a lot of these other cards and stuff, like you could end up losing like a permanent or two to like your opponent's removal spell, which will turn on like the full mode of Fatal Push, which can upgrade and destroy bigger creatures like old growth trolls and things of that nature. You have 4 Thoughtseize as a way of just like disruption. You have we've talked about Thoughtseize being probably the best discard spell available, period. And this is no different. You're essentially a combo deck playing the Jund colors, so Thoughtseize is going to kind of like clear the way, against those blue-white decks to make sure that you resolve your Transmogrify, or that your Atraxa is going to stick around on the battlefield, or just getting to hit some key aggressive pieces from like your more aggressively slanted opponents to make sure that you survive, get this Atraxa in play, and then completely stop any sort of offense that they can mount against you. Finally, you have like this Duress. It's just like an added discard spell that is going to help you against like those control decks and people playing like more removal spells and stuff to kind of deal with the Atraxa, because obviously we've kind of built our game plan around this card in particular, and running Realmbreaker is like fine as like a way that you could eventually close out the game. But Atraxa is the big one that is going to do it, way more consistent than any other deck or any other of these cards can do. The mana base is pretty simple. You have a lot of black mana sources that come and play untapped because you have like these fatal pushes and stuff like that. Uh, you of course have like rock veils that come into play untapped, or come into play tapped unless you control 2 or more lands. Some of these like pain lands, pathways, so you can make sure that you get your colors, but again, mainly like the black pathways, so you are able to play your discard spells on turn 1. The World Tree, of course, being like a mana fixer, which there is 2 of them. I did miss that. There is 2 World Trees, so that is my bad. Of course, I was looking at it with both of them there. So there's 2 World Trees, 2 Proving Grounds where you can end up cycling these, or of course, like they just completely fix your mana, giving you all the colors that you need. Mirrex being the one that I wanted to highlight the most because it just gets to make a token where like the rest of these like you don't get any Dwarven Mind shenanigans and things like that, or even the like not Witch's House. There's like a green one that makes a food token. So that is Jund midrange slash Jund Atraxa for the Pioneer format. Just it looks like a really cool deck. It looks like it would be a lot of fun, and slamming an Atraxa and drawing a bunch of cards too is always really sweet because you kind of set yourself up to hit like another Transmogrify and like some kind of token producer, so that if your opponent does eventually deal with an Atraxa or deals with like that turn, it will essentially come back and force them to do it all over again. Of course, getting to draw, some of these discard spells to even get to interact and base your strategy like that way. So that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video, comment down below if there's another deck that you want to see, and of course subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell as well so you know when videos like this and others get posted. And of course follow those links in the description as well. That's going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next video.